Yeah, well, thank you, John. And it's wonderful to follow you, Matt, because we're going to talk a little bit about anamnesis here as well in a different context. So this is great. And thank you, Glenn and Lisa and Dave and John for bringing us all together, your efforts to do so. And thank you, everybody, for your presence here. I'm coming to you from inside my converted Sprinter. I've been traveling North America for the last 11 months, mostly wild places. And I'm telling you this because I'm not in a wild place right now, but I'm in a campground and I'm calling on Wi-Fi from this campground. I hope it's going to be fine, but if not, let me know and I'll turn my video off. What else before we begin? I just also want to introduce the fact that what we're going to explore here is an area that I've been reflecting on for some time for a manuscript that it's in its early stages. And the seed of this came from a conversation with my good friend Mary Claire on a walk some months ago, and she asked me a question about the immune system and the soul, and so that was the seed of this. These ideas are not fully formed, so I really appreciate the opportunity to explore this evening. And then again, as we begin together, and even though what we're going to explore here is rich in concepts, it's possible to open to the fullness of the body even as we're exploring ideas. And so I just want to offer that as an invocation, really to be present to the body itself as we kind of journey through what Gebser offers us of the unfolding of the structures of consciousness, which I'm going to map out across the body, across time. So we'll begin. I've entitled this Vertex is Everywhere, Immune System as Perceptual Verition. Jean Gebser's structures of consciousness reflect that consciousness unfolds more of the body as consciousness itself unfolds. According to Gebser, each unfolding structure has an organ of emphasis, this organ the activity and perceptivity through which consciousness finds expression. Gebser does not give us an organ of activity and perceptivity in the integral structure, referring to the vertex. We'll explore the immune system as vertex. And we'll explore the nature of present-day epidemic of diseases of the immune system, namely autoimmune diseases and cancer, suggesting the widening epidemic may be indicative of the deficient mental structure, the human now groping toward, I'm echoing Teilhard here, the integral. And while it's true that we're articulating anatomical and evolutionary aspects of human physiology, we're not doing so as an evolutionary approach to Gebser. The aim is to map consciousness across the body as an unfolding whole, calling on Gebser's insights about organ emphasis. And our emphasis is on the human, though we need not limit to the human the mapping of consciousness unfolding the body, as Dr. Kalaman intimated yesterday, but to recognize that through the unfolding of each structure in the human, earlier evolutionary pathways become intensified, and later pathways appear as novel. We'll see, I hope, the becoming of the human as evolution, as calling forth organism itself, calling forth, indeed urging the primordial, which is to say the origin, as a guiding force in the unfolding toward the integral structure. So I want to begin by clarifying what Gebser means by consciousness. For Gebser, and these are his words, Consciousness is neither knowledge nor conscience, but must be understood in the broadest sense as wakeful presence. Notice what it is not. Neither the cognitive nor feeling states, but something behind and before and beyond them, that an originary wakeful presence which travels through them. We begin as the archaic, as the expressiveness in our particular substantiation in human form, as the primordial. The archaic, and these are Gebser's words again, is akin, if not identical, to the original state of biblical awareness. This is a dreamlike state, absent dreaming, a wholeness of body in harmony with itself and all that is. Soul is as yet dormant, mind is as yet thought, the human is entranced inside this lucid, sleep-like flow of being, wholly within the world as a whole, the world as we could say amnion. Consciousness is everywhere, in the world and in the body as a unity of being. Gebser doesn't give us an organ of emphasis in the archaic, not only because it would be supposition, but as much to suggest that any emphasis would be to step aside from the unity of being itself. We unfold as humans into the magical structure of wakeful awareness. Here we begin to hear, not first sound, but first intrinsic awareness of being in the world through sound received. First awareness of the labyrinthine folds of within, awareness not as thought, awareness of being the within of being itself, the single point within the world. Wakeful presence abides within the vital structures of the body, the metabolic and homeostatic, what might be called the instinctive. Let's shine a light upon neuroevolutionary thought and what it refers to as the first brain, the brainstem, which is intimately intertwined with the gut, what is often called the second brain, but may in fact be the first. And from the brainstem, 10 of 12 vital cranial nerves emerge. These nerves are active in assuring the body's aliveness and movement through the world to secure food and water, maintain warmth, and sense any threat to the continuation of being. Recognize that these are pathways that complexify the vital activities of existence. We're not suggesting consciousness resides in the brain. We're suggesting these neuronal pathways support, indeed intensify, through bodily complexification, what activities are already there. We unfold as humans into the mythical structure of wakeful presence. Here we begin to feel the soul alive in the world and to give word to such feeling. Soul, for Gebser, is at once reflection and reflector of the inner world. This is not to say that soul was not alive before the mythical. It's in the mythical, through the human, that wakeful presence becomes present to the aliveness of soul, ever intrinsic to being itself. And because this is so, the human is given over to utterances, given over to word. Word is sound that becomes ever more complex in meaning. The late philosopher Hans Jonas, in his work The Phenomenon of Life, urged that the experience of feeling comes about through the capacity to move, that movement is a response to an inner impulse, perhaps for nourishment, perhaps to avoid a threat, and that the feeling, that the duration between the impulse and the fulfillment of the impulse is the birth of feeling. So we can say that the human is not the only creature that has feeling. And it's also true that the human is not the only creature to utter sound. What happens in the human, in the unfolding into and through the mythical, is the intensification of awareness of feeling, and complexification of sound. The soul wonders about itself and is given to the impulse to utter what wonders and feels. And if we attempt to locate the organs of emphasis of the mythical, we come to the heart and mouth, to that which enlivens reflection as reflector, and that which enlivens the soul through word. And if we shine that same earlier light upon neuroevolutionary thought, we come to the midbrain, the limbic system, which is intimately intertwined with the activities of feeling, of memory, and learning. The limbic system is also where diurnal rhythms of day and night become intensified in life, and evermore in the unfolding mythical structure of the human. Note that in the mythical, wakeful presence in the human becomes aware of the rhythmicity and polarity, whereas before this was not so. Before, what was dawn and what was dusk are not perceived as distinct. The experience of rhythm comes to awareness as an ever-rounding circle of movement, within the circle two unifying poles. The human begins to not only recognize, but also reflect polarity through word, like the moon reflecting the borrowed light from the sun. And if we follow neuroevolutionary thought through limbic activity, we see a newly vital cranial nerve, this one not apparent in life forms that don't have a midbrain. Now we've encountered 11 of 12 cranial nerves. This one is the olfactory nerve, which is responsible for the perception of smell. The olfactory nerve is so entwined with the limbic system and feeling, it would be near impossibility to untease them. We unfold as humans into the mental structure of wakeful presence. Here we transcend wonder into thought, and over time, such thought becomes discursive, directive, which is to say it becomes cerebral. Thought begins to delineate cause and effect, and over more time, thought becomes rational and then perspectival, directing an emergent self out into the world. Now dividing inside from outside, self from world. Self is in here, world is out there. The world out there is this and that. It's an ever more divided domain of particularities, of concepts. It's a measurable world. And because the world is out there, divided, something of perceptivity must prevail to direct self to the world and identify these particularities. And that something is the I, the self-referential apical point of a triad, beyond which are 2 points out in the world. Each is separate from, indeed, they're opposing one another in a spatial way. Such perspective becomes not only how we see the horizon before us, but how we see conceptually the totality of existence. Not only does the eye become the dominant organ of perceptivity, but its very cells change. Cone cells in the center of the eye detail what the eye sees. Their numbers and activities become more predominant during the mental structure than rod cells. Rod cells are on the periphery. They take in more of the world surround, and they see color. Gebser notes that with the leap to the mental, the human also develops a more pronounced forehead, that area behind which an emerging neocortex is coming into prominence of activity. So for the first time in our mapping of neuroevolutionary unfolding, we come to an apparent outward physical manifestation in the human of an inward unfolding of consciousness itself. The leap to the mental is a significant unfolding in the human as an expression of consciousness, though it's not unique to the human. Aquatic mammalian species, namely the dolphin and whale, have prominent neocortical external features as well, also implicating neocortical activity activity we do not as yet fully understand. So from a Teilhardian perspective, we can ask, did these other mammalian physical features co-arise with the human? And if we follow neuroevolutionary thought one step further along the trajectory of cranial nerves, we come now to the optic nerve, that which travels from the eye to the visual centers of the brain. Most of the fibers of the optic nerve run through what is called the lateral geniculate nucleus, or LGN. What's significant is that the LGN is located in the thalamus. And the thalamus is often called the gateway to the neocortex. You might think of it as the information center of the brain. So the two are now intertwined, vision and thought, in these physiologic pathways. We see here that with the unfolding of the mental structure, the human organism unfolds new pathways and structures to perceive the world in these novel ways, namely discursive and perspectival. Again, consciousness, as it's intensifying, the body's complexifying. Indeed, it's manifesting more body with the unfolding of consciousness itself. What of the unfolding integral structure? How might we map an organ emphasis for an unfolding we can't yet see through the lens of hindsight? We have nothing to go on. And yet, if we call forth from within the aperspectival lens of the integral, we do. Gebser gives the vertex as the organ emphasis, but he says little more, bracketing even vertex as if to indicate a coming into being of that which is not so much an organ as that which is opposite the base. Now, if we apply this construct through mental perspectival thought, we see vertex as an opposing position from that which is below, perhaps the crown of the head. Such a position would be apical, it would be a zenith. But there can be no apical point, no zenith, within or around an aperspectival sphere. Gebser acknowledges Sri Aurobindo's supramental, which could tend toward that which is at once of and beyond the body, as organismic being of consciousness expressed. If this is so, the activity of perceptivity must function across and beyond the body. The vertex is at once apex and base, above and below, beyond and within. So I offer that the immune system offers an image of such an expression as vertex, as that which is at once originary to life itself, vital, responsive to feeling, and intrinsic to thought, that which is ever expressive of an integral whole within the human embedded within the world at once beyond and as the body. While the tendency is to conceptualize the immune system as activities of defense, concepts derived during the mental structure itself, a more updated construct articulates the immune system as the activities that attend to and support the cohesion of self. Through the activities of the immune system, the biological being coheres as a whole, which is to say it's a unification of activity. Self here refers to biological identity, made so by the semipermeable boundary that delineates but does not separate the activities of one life from another. We're not referring to self as an ego construct separate from the world. Inasmuch as the immune system wages a response to biological threat, it also regulates development, repair, and regeneration, and unceasingly reestablishes and potentiates the endlessly permeable boundaries of biological being. There's no command center for the immune system. It's not an organ. There is, in fact, no way to locate the immensely intertwined processes that collectively constitute an immune response. These are processes that exert influence everywhere in the organism all at once. So the immune system is a multivalent immediacy of presentiating self with world, world with self. So let's imagine for a moment the intestinal lining. It's an interface between inside and outside, between what is of the elements of biological identity and what is not. That is, between self cells, microbial cells, and digested molecules of food. Here, the immune system has its work cut out, allowing the passage of what was on the outside to come inside, discerning what of the outside is nutriment and what's now waste, and allowing what is nutriment to pass through for the continuation of life of the whole. Here, body and world are intimately intertwined in a moment-by-moment transparency of self-world. Trillions of microbes at this interface aid in the breakdown of food to allow for passage across the tight junctions of the intestinal lining. Until these molecules pass through, they are, according to the immune system, still outside, and only once they pass through do they come inside. And it's then that they become the inside, even though they're not self cells. The immune system must see through them as true to the nourishment of the continuation of the whole. So there's a diaphaneity here. The immune system expresses perceptual verition. And what of the microbes themselves? Well, they are at once inside and outside, self and world, not only aiding the activities of the immune system, but regulating these activities and producing hormones that nourish and support states of being, presentiating when the body is in harmony as wakeful presence. And they call into question the conceptual delineations of self and world. We come now to the concretion of time, recalling the within, I'm echoing Teilhard again, that is always guiding the unfolding of activities of being. What is future for the immune system is called up from the past within the present. Every moment of biological continuation is an unforgetting of what has come before, unforgetting what is self and what is non-self. What of non-self nourishes and supports continuation, and what of non-self may threaten continuation. Continuation is not merely homeostatic, which is to say maintenance of being. Continuation is allostatic, which is to say becoming through change. The organism is not inclined toward a status quo, but toward unfolding more of its being as an ever-expressive teleological tendency toward becoming, which is apparent in consciousness itself. The two are not two, but one. So let's turn now to the widening epidemic of diseases of the immune system, namely autoimmune diseases and cancer, with this question: why is the human organism expressing itself in this way with such prevalence at this time? Environmental factors in context notwithstanding. At its most basic expressiveness, autoimmunity is confusion, perturbation of the recognition of what is self and what is not self. In the autoreactive state, self is perceived as non-self. What is normally perceived as inside is now perceived as outside. Outside is in opposition to the cohesion of biological identity, and so it must be rejected. At the risk of oversimplifying immensely complex and as yet poorly understood physiologic processes, and while I don't want to suggest that autoimmunity is new or unique to the human, I do want to draw attention to the dualistic nature of the mental constructs of self and non-self, inside and outside, even of the scientific perspective that immunity is defense against a threat, a warring by the body to the potential danger out there. The nature of these constructs is unique to the mental structure, and the constructs are given in expression and and through the body itself. They become reflected. So given what we've explored here about the body as expressive of the unfolding structures of consciousness, might we wonder if the now deficient mental structure and the already pull toward the integral is reflected by the body vis-a-vis what we're calling a confused immunologic state, that the bourgeoning of autoimmunity considered through a Gebserian lens is a collective call for unforgetting the primordial unity of self.
5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I suspect that if this is so, it would be those persons most perceptually sensitive at this time, whose bodies would be most susceptible to the deficient mental, and would be more likely to experience the breakdown of the efficient recognition of biological integrity, because concepts skew the unity of being. The most sensitively perceptive amongst us may be a within clarion call to the collective leap. In cancer, the immune system is challenged in a different way. We might imagine cancer as the flip side of the coin of autoimmunity. Cancer is a failure of individual cells to recognize their social embeddedness. The cells seem to exert a will of their own, refusing to die like other cells do when those cells recognize they're no longer of benefit to the whole. Cancer cells evade the immune system. They rob tissues of vital energies. They outpace growth of other cells and colonize tissues. Activities we see in the human in the deficient mental structure. But here's where the immune confusion lies in the expression of cancer. For reasons we don't understand, sometimes the immune system goes along with the willful cancer cells and not only helps maintain cancer, it promotes it. Here, cancer is an outside tolerated within. It's a disease of decohesion. The integrity of the whole is compromised by a runaway part and an immune system that can no longer establish what belongs for the good of the whole. With cancer, might we wonder if the now deficient mental structure and the already pull toward the integral is reflected by the body as a collective call for unforgetting the primordial unity of self with world? Might the burgeoning of these diseases of the immune system be metaphorical expressions by consciousness itself reaching beyond the mental? These questions are purely speculative, turning what I'm calling a hermeneutic spiral around the emergence of the body's expressiveness with each unfolding structure of consciousness, winding a spiral that as it ascends toward the integral, it must at once descend toward origin to call it forth. We see in this exploration the immune system fits this image. So what's our response to these questions? How do we hold them within the body itself? Not as ideas, but as living questions in the fabric of our being. My sense is that reflecting on them is a beginning, but there's more. A body in harmony with itself as a whole is a body not defending against a world out there, but a body as wakeful presence expressing origin itself. Sri Aurobindo gave us this, and I'm going to say it in Gebserian terms, and that is that origin at once descends and ascends through the body, changing its own expressiveness, even at the cellular level. When we abide as a unity of body, heart, intellect, which we're saying here as archaic and magical, mythical and mental, as an integral whole, the immune system quiets to a whisper and hums in harmony with being itself. This is Vertex. The human is restored to intimacy with, perhaps even as, origin, and unfolds becoming in ways we cannot as yet imagine. Thank you.